Last week, I shared with you the Roxon Flex Companion, and it seems to me that you are pretty interested in it, but there was a lot of questions. And since there is only 1 day left to get access to that 15% discount, I figured we'd address those questions and also do some comparisons so you could have even more information. This will be the last hurrah before it is released on November 30th. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, maybe you're catching this for the very first time. This is the first video you've seen relating to the Roxon Flex system. I have a series of videos that will hopefully help explain it a little bit more. So I have my master guide that's almost an hour long and is very detailed, as much as I could be. And I also have the initial release video on the Flex Companion that will also link down below. So hopefully those will be helpful to you. I'm also going to be answering some of the questions that might pop up in this video. So let's kick things off with weight and size. I think that's an important question that was asked, and let's go ahead and determine it exactly. So this works out to be 128 grams approximately. Now, of note, this is a very similar weight to the Leatherman Free T4, and it is very similar also in dimension in almost every respect. If we're talking about the Fieldmaster comes in around 100 grams. The Ranger, I want to say, 118 grams. And then this one is the Delmont, and I can't remember, I think it's the S18. This one is going to come out at 93 grams. So similar tool sets, I figured we'd go ahead and show those off. So that I will also convert to Imperial as well. All right, so that's the weight. Now what about dimensional length? All right, so the length of the tool is going to be around 3.5 inches and around 5/8 of an inch total thickness. To put it in comparison, a more visual standpoint, this is the Fieldmaster, and you can see that the length or the width of the Fieldmaster is actually more than the Roxon Flex Companion, okay? So that kind of gives you a nice little ballpark. So 4 layers here, but they have spacers in between, which is why there's 5 able to fit into this one. They are similar, actually, the layers in thickness to the ones on the Flex. That's an interesting note. So 2mm thickness. All right, a couple other questions that we have. We're going to kind of go through them one at a time. How do you order the left-handed version? So if you don't know already, there is a left-handed option for this pre-order. Now, when you go to click the button, you'll notice that they have added a little stipulation. If you want a left-handed version of this tool, you just have to make a note in the purchase. With the pre-order discount of 15%, the price will be $42.50. Okay? So as part of that, you will get this tool fully loaded, as you see here, along with the comb option and also this extra tool. The price of this, if you were to build it on release day, is going to be exactly the same, but in this case, you're going to get these 2 tools bonus. So that's kind of the added value, and then you will also be able to obviously get the discount. All right, so tool set. Let's talk about the tool set one more time. So this thing is coming with the saw, reamer awl, the scissor, the flathead, which has a depth gauge, file, and is also a small pry, and then you have the D2 blade. On the back, you have a locking, people maybe didn't see it, a locking bit driver. It does not lock in a 90-degree orientation, and honestly, that's probably for the best because people might apply a little too much force to it in that instance anyway. The other questions people have, there's a number of them. So will there be a way to fully customize the tool? So I have a second handle here, which, by the way, the weight of the second handle by itself, it's worth noting, is 83 grams. And I think at this point we can take this out of here. So 83 grams, this handle, just the handle, and it will come with 5 little spacers installed, okay, will be purchasable on November 30th for $20. So you can use the builder, you can add this, and then add any component that you see fit. The reason you would consider buying it fully loaded like this is because you're getting a discount by having 2 additional tools that would otherwise work out to be more than $10 in value. Okay? That's the reason you would consider doing this. So just save a little bit of money if you're planning on using most of those tools anyway. But if you don't want to and you want to build it exactly as you see it in your head, you can do that. Now, this is only going to be true if you live in the United States. So this answers the next question. When will the Roxon be shipping to Europe? This is a relatively small company. It's important to note. This is a small company. And in order for them to have distribution in the EU or in the UK, it's a very involved process, especially because intakes from those places are heavily controlled. You will be able to purchase something like a fully loaded Flex on AliExpress, but also on Amazon UK. I think, and I don't know for sure, but this will eventually be available there in the same way that it is here. So you'll probably have only the option of the preloaded tool, and hopefully that will come in the near future. I don't know the exact release date. If I do find that info, I will potentially update that down in the description or make a future video. Okay, closer look at these scissors. Let's talk about the scissors. I've showcased them a number of times in the past, but we'll go ahead and we'll talk about them. So these actually cut pretty decently. They have good cutting geometry. I would prefer it to be a little bit sharper at the tip, but that's a pretty simple modification with a grinder or something along those lines. What I would say about these is that they are relatively thin. I would not recommend using these, or any multi-tool scissor for that matter, on zip ties. There are a few exceptions to the rule. Tools that have big shears included in them, like this Roxon K2 SE, they are going to handle that kind of work a lot easier. And just like you wouldn't use cuticle scissors on sheet metal, okay, there are different scissors for different purposes. It is a good chance that you probably want to get a proper electrician shear to do the kind of work you're describing if you want to use it on zip ties. It'll make things easier and the tool will last a lot longer. Okay, folding ruler. 1 slot or 2. So this is actually a 2-slot tool, and I had to double check that, but yes, it is a 2-slot tool. All of these sides, this has a total of 5 slots, 2 millimeters each, and the tools come in increments of 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so a 4-layer tool would be something like this bit driver here. That's a 4-layer tool. The ruler here is a 2-layer tool, and then there will be 2 additional slots left over in the frame when you take it out. So let me take this out real quick, put this back in, and boom, and then relock it. Okay, so yes, it is a 2-layer tool. I'm actually kind of excited about that to be released. Will the bit holder work with the Steinwhale Bits? Now, if you're not familiar with these, I did a whole video on this, but I was introduced to it by Todd, and I'm trying to remember his last name. I can't remember off the top of my head, but he had this incredible video about a compact EDC toolkit, and I discovered this incredible bit kit, which has bits like nothing I've ever seen before. I've never found anything else that's this compact. So take a look at this. These are double-sided bits, but look at how tiny they are. They're tiny. They're basically the size of a standard 1/4-inch bit. So as we would expect, they should work with the locking bit driver on the back of the Flex Companion, and they do indeed. I will say this, one caveat to this rule, and please be very careful. When you are using bits from this kit that are sharp or pointy, like these Phillips drivers, right? You want to be aware that the bottom of this is a magnet. And if you put too much pressure on it and there's a precise tip putting itself downwards, you could crack that magnet if you're trying to push too hard. So there's times when you just want to go grab a proper tool. And you need to know when you've hit that line before you destroy your tool. So if you actually crack that using these double-sided bits, they weren't initially designed for it, but they do work. So I highly recommend. And if you can keep it with the extender, you can always just set it up like this, and then you don't have to worry anymore. Because if you crack this, it's not the end of the world. Bit extenders, you know, dime a dozen. But the fact that it comes with both, you get it anyway, you may as well keep them together. Great, great question. I actually didn't realize it until someone mentioned it, and I went back and checked it, and yes, they absolutely work. So the next question is, will the D2 blade fit in the standard flex? And the answer is absolutely yes. I've already done this, and I've been carrying my flex companion with the D2 blade for a number of months since I got the prototypes. So yes, it will absolutely do so. I love it. It's one of my favorite things, and you can see, as you can see, I'm actually disengaging the lock with my hand, keeping my fingers out of the path with no problem. And all I have to do is get it to go that far for disengage. Just show you guys once again how the system works. If I click it all the way, it now locks in place, and then the tool, the blade can go past 180. Now it's in the disengagement position, and then I can slide the tool right out, just like so. Now I'm going to put this back in for just a minute. The question was also, what about the left-handed blade? Well, here's the thing. You can, in fact, use the left-handed blade as well. So let me go ahead and show you guys how that works. So we're going to go ahead and disengage this lock, or I should say I have to deploy this already, you know, first, and then I'm going to disengage the lock, take out the saw, and then we can slot in the left-handed blade, and then yes, you can have both a left-handed and right-handed blade, just like so. So yes, you absolutely can use both the left and the right-handed blade. And these blades will also be available on the 30th of November. They can't be pre-ordered, but you can get the 10% discount. They will be $8 a piece. So whether you want to get the frame, the base frame design, or the plier-based version, everything works with everything. It's great. I love it. Okay, more questions. Is the T-Shank proprietary? No. This is the best part. So the T-Shank holder that they are releasing on November 30th, which I really like. It's a redesign of the prototype that I got. You can see how much shorter it is, which allows the saw to fit inside the frame. And let's go ahead and show you that. I'm gonna have to, you know, I'll just take this, I'll just take these out. We'll go ahead and take out the prototypes that I'm gonna now spoil by accident. Here, we're gonna take these out. These were the Easter egg, if you didn't catch it in the last video, with these two tools. Let me go ahead and pull those out. And then I'm gonna take this out as well, because I need the long slot. There, it fits just as so, and this will fit also in the Flex Companion without any issue. So we take this out right here, and it also will fit in the Companion without any adjustment whatsoever. So everything works as intended. Now, since we're on the subject of the T-Shank holder, let me take this out for just a minute. There are shims that come with it. Now, these shims are important. You're going to need to leave them in there, but you can actually fit a Leatherman Surge T-Shank holder without any modifications. All you have to do is make sure that you set the tool in without the shims, and now it will definitely work. There we go. So it's ready to rock and roll. Actually, I think I'm going to put one of the shims in because I think it's a little bit loose still. Interesting. There we go. Maybe not. Oh, maybe, okay, maybe not. Oh, okay. There you go. So, yes, it will work with the Surge holder, but notice that the Surge actually has an extra length. Now, in the past, what I did was, with the prototype, I went ahead and I cut down the Surge file. Now, because they have shortened it, I probably have more cut off than I actually need. You'll notice that there's all this extra space I could have kept with the file. So the older design with the older T-Shank, that would have just passed the edge of that tool. So you will have to cut it down if you want to use the surge file, but it will work perfectly fine with off-the-shelf T-Shank blades. You don't need to buy Roxon saws. You can use Milwaukee, you can use Bosch, you can use whatever brand you want. They should fit. Now, some of them, of course, are going to be longer, and those will certainly not fit in the frame, but you can always just leave this empty or leave it with a different saw blade and then carry those longer ones with you. And that's one of the advantages of a T-Shank holder, in that you can actually have a saw that's probably never ever going to fit inside a a multi-tool, right? So putting these back, let me go find you one of those long saw blades so you can see what I'm talking about. So just taking a look at this, you can see this T-Shank is quite a bit longer, like not a little bit, like almost an inch. And there are even longer ones out there that you could use. And some are also specific to, where's that? Oh, I already put them back in there. Some are also specific to certain tasks. There's some pruning saws out there, but yes, it will still work with all of these blades. It's just a matter of not being able to fit it inside the frame. I mean, I guess technically you could set it like that, but yes, it does. They do work. They're just not specifically designed to fit closed. You can always leave the T-Shank empty if you really want to, but I don't see why you wouldn't just use a standard T-Shank holder, T-Shank blade while you're sitting with your tool. Now, the last question that I'm going to cover specifically has to do with the pen. And because I initially was going to answer a certain way and then realized that, there is actually a way to use it a little bit different. So obviously you could just take the pen out and start writing. Now, it is also of note that this is black ink. I would love it if they did blue ink, but the thing is that this is a standard refill. It's a standard refill that you can find anywhere and get replacements for. And that is fantastic, because if you've ever tried to replace a pen from Victorinox, they're like $8 each. Okay, they're very expensive, and they are pressurized, but they are very, very expensive. So yes, it does work by itself, but somebody said, is there a holder for it? Not technically, but you can put it in reverse in the holder, and if this is more comfortable for you, you can certainly write with it. I was surprised that was a really good point, because yeah, you can actually take the entire thing out because it is modular, and you can use this as a handle. And actually, it's definitely a little bit more comfortable. So very cool, good idea. And yeah, that comes with the Flex Companion. Overall, I like it. Now, comparisons. Let's talk comparisons for a few minutes. So first we have, of course, the Flex Companion. Roxon already makes technically a competitor to this, but it doesn't have the modular system. What it does have, however, is the ability to use some of the biggest scissors out there. In fact, from a toughness perspective, even Victorinox can't compete, and these things cut incredibly well. There are plenty of videos out there showcasing that. And yeah, this is still a great tool. And at $38 minus the 10% for the discount in the link below, yeah, it's a good tool. It's really just a matter of, is this tool set going to fit you? If it does, maybe that's the right call. But it's not going to have the 1/4-inch bit driver, and I think that's going to be a big sticking point for people. Definitely would recommend both of these. I'm a huge fan of both of these, and I think that, yeah, it's kind of dependent on you. Now, when it comes to the T4 from Leatherman, I'm not a huge fan with this, because it's now at $70. And even if you were to load this thing up with all the components that are the most expensive, you're probably looking about a wash on the price. On deployment, it's actually about the same. You can deploy everything here one-handed, even the bit driver. Yes, I can get access to that one-handed pretty easily. And the same thing is going to be true with the T4. The weight is almost identical, 4.3 ounces, 4.5 ounces, pretty close in weight. And when it comes to blade, oh, I'd much rather have the blade on the Flex Companion. Not only is it D2, but it's much easier to deploy than the one that was on the T4. In fact, the blade is so difficult to deploy on here, I ended up replacing the spring with a washer so that it was a lot easier to do. but the resistance is very, very high. So a lot of people might actually struggle to get this thing open a lot of the time. All right. Yeah, tool set wise, scissors are actually pretty comparable. I'd actually give the edge to Leatherman on this one, just slightly, especially because they have a more precise tip than the one on the Flex Companion. But other than that, I would still go with the Flex Companion. Personally, I like to customize. This is, however, made in the United States, and it is also going to have a 40-year warranty as long as you have the insider track. So that's certainly of note. And that 40-year warranty is very, very good. Now, Victorinox, the kings of pocket knives. A couple things I want to say about Victorinox. Number one, there is no company on planet Earth that is more consistent in quality control and longevity than Victorinox. I have never seen any other company that is able to match them. None. Not even a single one. And I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. Every single Victorinox tool I get out of the box is basically perfect. And that's 100 different cases of that. I have a friend who has bought twice or 3 times as many as I have and has only had one issue in his entire lifespan with any Victorinox out of the box, and it was immediately replaced by Victorinox. That's the level of quality control. And longevity, I buy these used tools that are Victorinox tools that are 40 years old and they still work like a champ. So we're not trying to say in any way that Roxon can match it. The amount of tools that Victorinox makes in a day is 45,000. 45,000. That's probably more total tools than Roxon sells in a whole year, probably. It's not really a comparison in that regard. But when it comes to tool set, there is something to be said here. The tool density on something like the Fieldmaster is certainly higher, but the convenience factor is also quite a bit lower. Like I would much rather have, for instance, the inline locking bit driver than having this Phillips driver on the back of this tool. I find that a T-handle Phillips is always particularly awkward. I've never really enjoyed it. The reamer all on the back is also quite a bit more awkward than having one that is inline. And an inline reamer that locks is also quite a bit safer. The bigger issue for me has to do with the scales. From the very beginning, I have absolutely hated how slippery these scales are. If they're gonna make a mold, at the very least, why not put a little texture like you have here on the S18? It makes a huge, huge difference. And the G10 texture on the Roxon is just superior. G10 is also a far harder wearing material. This is way more durable because it's a fiber reinforced plastic, okay? So quite a bit stronger than the one on the Victorinox. Now certainly they have scale tools and that is an advantage, but I don't think that that's enough of an advantage for me personally to pick it over the Companion. But you know, I am who I am. You make your own decisions. But yeah, I pretty much replace the scales on every single Swiss Army knife that I actually use with something that has proper texture. Usually in aftermarket scales that tend to be even more expensive than this entire tool. As far as tool set is concerned, there's a couple things worth noting here. Number one, the saw on Victorinox is unbeatable still to this day. It's not just that it cuts better, but because of its shape, it can also be used to drill holes. Felix Imler, the MacGyver himself, has shown how you can use this saw in some pretty crazy ways. And so, yes, obviously, Victorinox absolutely destroys. But I will say, when it comes to cutting, I found that these were surprisingly comparable. Speed-wise and comfort, they're both tapered and they do pretty well. The length, however, of the saw blade, you can tell, is just a little bit longer with the Victorinox. Yet another advantage that goes to them. Now, that's a slight advantage in Victorinox's favor, but nothing. There is no scissor on planet Earth in a multi-tool that compares to the one on the 91 or 93 millimeter Victorinox. They are just absolutely insane because the heat treatment's spot on. The geometry is spot on. And they also are very precise at the tip, capable of snipping at the very, very end and being so narrow that you can get into small spaces. It's not going to be a scissor that you use on zip ties, but for the purposes that you really want to use a scissor for, it's much more ideal. And I prefer Victorinox over pretty much any other scissor imaginable. That's pretty much how it goes. Also, there is a bottle opener and a can opener on the Victorinox. If that matters to you, those are there, and it's not true with this, although you can, of course, swap the tools. And then another very important thing is that Victorinox has not one but two blades. And there are times you want to get very precise, and that small blade really comes in handy. So from a tool set perspective, I think Victorinox wins in general to the base model. It's the fact that you have the option to swap to a T-Shank holder or a diamond file or whatever that makes the companion a little bit more interesting. Now, of course, also what makes it interesting is the ability to deploy the tools one-handed, so you'll be able to access them very quickly, whereas this is always a two-handed tool. Very important note. Also, someone will ask, can the blades be made non-locking? The answer is yes, they can. So if you take this out for just a second, I can take just out this D2 blade here. This little tab here, or sorry, right here, this little locking tab, which is where the lock sits in, if you were to grind it down that corner, you can certainly make this tool non-locking. Now you might have to try and fiddle with it, but it is absolutely possible to make this a non-locking blade, and you can do that with pretty much every implement. Because you can buy them separately, doing so won't require you to destroy the tool, and you can always replace it if you mess up. So yet another advantage. Okay. Now, the Ranger is my favorite of the outdoorsman's tools. It's basically just a strictly, and I mean this, a strictly better version of the Huntsman. Not this, this is the Fieldmaster. The Huntsman, and I love this thing. It actually has 3 additional tools. So it has a small flathead, a chisel, which is very useful, and it has a file on it as well. This is still going to be lighter than the Flex Companion, but it kind of takes on a different dimension. So they're very similar if you turn them like this way, and we'll talk ergonomics here for just a minute. You might think, because this is so boxy, that Victorinox would win on ergonomics, and here's my challenge for you. I believe that this is actually more comfortable in hand than any Victorinox I have ever held, period. I'm not kidding. Now, I think the K2 SE is actually a little bit more comfortable, slightly. Oh, yeah. Definitely a little bit more comfortable than the Companion by just a smidgen. But these are surprisingly comfortable because all of the tools are flush with the handle, whereas all of these kind of stick out just a little bit too much, and especially with the corkscrew, that is not nearly as comfortable. I think with the Phillips, it's a little bit better, but then something is always digging in your hand on the front. Ergonomics, Roxon takes the cake. As weird as it is and as boxy as it is, they're actually really, really, really comfortable. If there are other specific questions or other comparisons you'd like me to make, maybe I'll make a third video as well. Hopefully this is helpful in helping you decide whether you want to pre-order this tool, because there's only another day left to get that 15% discount. Otherwise, I would recommend not pre-ordering it, waiting till the release on November 30th, and then using the 10% link that is on the whole website. So I have that link down below. That will all be available. So then it makes more sense to do it at that point, right? So if you're not going to pre-order it in the next day, just wait, and then you can kind of think it through, figure out whether you want to do it as the complete kit with the comb and where is the, anyway, with the pen and everything else, or if you want to build it exactly as you see fit. Now, I will also mention there are a lot more tools coming for the Flex Companion. These are just 2 examples of prototypes that they're working on. A small scissor that fits in any slot, as well as a small double-sided diamond file, fine and medium grit. So I found that this basically had the same performance for me as the regular longer scissor. So I'll probably never go back. These are coming way after November 30th, but there's so much more coming. That's where I'm going to conclude it today. If you have any other questions, please leave it down in the comments section, and I will try to do my best to answer. As always, thank you guys so much for your time, and we'll talk again soon.